The desert wind carried nothing but dust and despair. My father's voice, rough as sandpaper from whiskey and disappointment, cut through the stifling air. Ain't no use moping, girl. What's done is done. He sat hunched over the table, counting coins. Each clink of metal was a nail in my coffin. The drought had killed our crops for the third year. The cattle were walking skeletons. My mother, Margaret, sat in the corner, a ghost in her own home, clutching a threadbare shawl in the oppressive heat. There must be another way, Thomas, she whispered. She's our only child. He slammed his fist on the table, sending coins scattering. Another way? You see another way, woman? The bank's breathing down our necks. We got no crops, no money, and winter's coming. I turned from the grimy window, my heart a cold stone in my stomach. I'd heard the whispers in town. The Masons had fallen far, and everyone knew it. What are you planning, Pa? I asked, though I already knew. I knew. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just kept gathering the scattered coins. Man came by yesterday, Apache, lives alone up in the Dragoon Mountains. He's got horses, good ones. Indians don't trade horses for nothing, I said, my voice barely a whisper. No, he agreed, finally looking at me. His eyes were dead. They don't. The silence was a living thing, suffocating me. My mother let out a sob, burying her face in her hands. The blood drained from my face. You wouldn't, I breathed. Pa, you couldn't. It's already arranged, he said, his voice flat as a tombstone. He'll be here before sundown. I stumbled backward. I'm your daughter. You're 18, he interrupted, his voice hard as flint. Old enough to be married off. At least this way, we get something out of it. That horse could mean the difference between surviving the winter and starving. A horse? The word was numb in my mouth. You're trading me for a horse? My mother finally spoke, a pathetic whimper. The Apache. He didn't seem cruel. He spoke some English, said he'd treat her proper. Proper? I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Living with a savage in the mountains? You call that proper? Watch your tongue, girl, my father warned. It's done. You'll go willing, or I'll tie you to that horse myself. I looked at my mother, begging with my eyes for some sign of protection, but she just wept, broken. As the sun bled across the horizon, the sound of hoofbeats began. My heart hammered against my ribs. I rushed to the window and saw him, a lone figure on horseback, leading another mount behind him. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30 summers, with long black hair and skin the color of the red earth. He wore a mix of traditional dress and white man's clothing. He moved with a grace that belonged to the mountains themselves. My father went out to meet him. I watched them speak in low tones. The Apache's face was a mask of stone, but his dark eyes swept toward the cabin, and I felt them on me, seeing right through the walls to where I stood trembling. My mother pressed something small and hard into my palm, her wedding ring. Maybe you can trade it, she whispered, for food, or passage back. She couldn't finish. The door opened. My father stood silhouetted against the dying light. Come on out, Clara, time to go. My legs felt like water, but I walked. Each step was the end of a world. The Apache waited, patient as a boulder. Up close, his face was angular, marked by a thin scar along one cheek. His eyes weren't black, but a deep, rich brown. They took me in without emotion. This is her, my father said. She's strong, knows how to work. The Apache nodded once. The horse, as agreed. He handed the reins of the spare mount to my father, who took them with eager, trembling hands. My life, exchanged for livestock. Please, I said, not knowing who I was begging. Enough, my father cut me off. You belong to him now. The words hit me like a fist. You belong to him now. The Apache approached slowly. From a pouch at his side, he took out a length of soft rope. I flinched, but he just fashioned it into a lead, attaching one end to his saddle and offering the other to me. For safety, he said quietly. Mountains are treacherous in darkness. I looked back at the cabin one last time. My mother, a ghostly figure in the doorway. My father already leading his new horse to the barn, not even watching me go. Ma! I cried, tears streaming down my face. Be strong, Clara, she called, her voice breaking. The Apache mounted his horse and looked down at me, I was to walk. I gripped the rope and followed. The last thing I heard was my mother's muffled sobs. Then there was only the sound of hoofbeats and the whisper of my own voice, a prayer and a curse. At 18, I was traded to a solitary Apache for a horse. The words tasted like ashes, bitter as the dust that rose with each step into the purple shadows of the mountains, into a future as unknown and fearsome as the silent man who now held my life on the end of a rope. The moon rose like a silver coin, casting eerie shadows across the desert. My feet burned. My thin shoes were already wearing through on the sharp rocks. I'd been walking for hours, a lifetime. The Apache rode ahead in silence. He never spoke, just glanced back now and then to make sure I was still there, still tied to his world. The rope stretched between us, a constant, nagging reminder. I stumbled for the third time, my knees scraping raw against the unforgiving ground. He finally stopped. In one smooth motion, he dismounted and walked toward me. I shrank back, but exhaustion had stolen my will to fight. "You ride now," he said, gesturing to his horse. I shook my head. "I don't know how. We never had horses for riding, only for work." He studied me for a long moment. Then he reached for me. My heart hammered, but his hands were surprisingly gentle as he helped me to my feet, a strange contrast to my own father's rough handling. "I will teach," he said, "but first we rest." He led me to a cluster of boulders, a small shelter from the biting night wind. From his saddlebags he produced a water skin. I drank greedily, the cool liquid a balm on my parched throat. As I drank, I watched him in the moonlight. The scar on his cheek seemed less a mark of violence and more a story written on his skin. His movements were efficient, purposeful. He unpacked a blanket, checked the horses, scanned the horizon. He was part of this wild place. I was an intruder. "What is your name?" I asked, the question surprising me as much as him. He paused, considering. "I am called Samuel," he said finally. "Samuel Crowfeather." "Samuel," I repeated, "a Christian name." "That's not—" "My father was white," he said, his voice flat, emotionless. "A missionary. My mother, Apache." He went back to his task, the conversation clearly over. The revelation hung in the air between us. A man of two worlds belonging to neither. He noticed me shivering and tossed me the blanket. It smelled of smoke and leather and something wild I couldn't name. "We reach my home tomorrow," he said, settling against a boulder. "Sleep now." "I can't sleep," I said, my voice small. "How do I know you won't—" His eyes met mine. "I traded for a wife, not a captive. You are under my protection now. No harm comes to you." The simple words, spoken with such calm certainty, should have meant nothing. But somehow, I believed him. Still, sleep was impossible. I sat huddled in the blanket, listening to the alien sounds of the desert night. The howl of coyotes, the whisper of wind through stone. When dawn painted the sky rose and gold, we started again. Samuel helped me onto his horse, showing me how to grip the mane, how to move with the animal. He walked alongside, leading the pack horse, seemingly tireless. As we climbed higher, the landscape changed. Juniper and piñon pine replaced the sparse desert scrub. The air grew cool, scented with resin and earth. I'd never seen such wild beauty. Towering red rock formations like ancient castles, deep canyons plunging to the center of the earth. Eagles circled high above. "It's magnificent," I breathed, momentarily forgetting my terror. Samuel glanced up, and I thought I saw a flicker of approval in his eyes. "The land is strong here. It teaches us to be strong too." At midday, we stopped by a small spring. He shared dried meat and flatbread. It was tough and salty, but hunger made it delicious. "Your family," I ventured, emboldened by his earlier reveal. "Do they live near?" "No family," he said curtly. "Only me." "But your mother?" "Dead, many years." His tone was a wall. I fell silent, contemplating the profound loneliness of his life. A man utterly alone in these vast mountains. What had driven him to trade a valuable horse for a wife he'd never even seen? As if reading my thoughts, he spoke again. "A man needs someone. The silence. It becomes too loud." The simplicity of it struck me. I thought of my own family's cabin, crowded and tense with unspoken hate, and wondered if there were different kinds of loneliness. The afternoon climb was treacherous. I clung to the horse's mane, trying not to look at the dizzying drops. Just as I thought I couldn't go on, we crested a ridge. I gasped. Below us lay a small, hidden valley, a secret paradise in the heart of the mountains. A stream ran through it, feeding a grove of cottonwoods. Against the far cliff face, I saw a structure, part natural cave, part stone and log construction. Home, Samuel said simply. As we descended, I felt like I was leaving the known world behind. This place was untouched, a piece of the earth as it had been at creation, beautiful and terrifying. His dwelling was more substantial than I'd expected. The cave extended with carefully built walls, a stone fire pit outside. It was primitive, but there was an order to it, a sense of purpose. He helped me dismount, my legs nearly buckling. He steadied me, his hands strong on my arms. For a moment we stood close. I caught his scent, sage, wood smoke, and clean sweat. Then he stepped back. "You rest," he said. "I bring water. Make fire." I sank onto a flat stone, too exhausted to help, and watched him move with an efficient grace that made me feel clumsy and foreign. As the sun set, he built a fire. The crackle of burning wood was a comforting, familiar sound in this alien world. He prepared a simple stew of dried meat and wild herbs. It was surprisingly good. I ate hungrily, aware of his eyes on me. When true darkness fell, the moment I'd been dreading arrived. He banked the fire and gestured toward the dwelling. "You sleep inside," he said. "I stay here." I stared at him. "You're not—" "When you are ready," he said quietly. "Not before." Relief flooded through me, so powerful it made me dizzy. It was followed by an unexpected twinge of something else. Disappointment? Surely not. I went inside. By the dim light of the dying fire, I saw a sleeping area covered with furs. It smelled of earth and stone, and him. I lay down fully clothed and pulled a fur over me. Through the entrance, I could see Samuel's silhouette as he sat by the fire, keeping watch. My protector, my captor. The man who had bought me for a horse, yet asked for nothing but my trust. The first week was a blur of adjustment and small rebellions. I woke each morning to find Samuel already at work. He would nod at me but rarely spoke, leaving me to stumble through this strange new life on my own. The daily tasks were harder than anything I'd known. Drawing water from the stream, starting a fire without matches, cooking with unfamiliar ingredients. My soft hands blistered. My back ached. More than once, I collapsed in frustrated tears. Samuel watched my struggles with an unreadable expression. He only helped when I was in real danger. It infuriated me, his silent observation, as if I were some creature being tested. "Why don't you just tell me how to do things?" I snapped one afternoon, after burning our meal for the second time. "Telling is not learning," he replied calmly. "You must find your own way." "My own way is back home," I shot back. "That home sold you for a horse," he reminded me, not unkindly. "This is home now." The truth of it stung worse than my blistered palms. That night I made my first escape attempt. I waited until his breathing deepened in sleep. He still slept outside, giving me the shelter. I crept from the dwelling, desperation my only guide. The moon was a sliver, offering little light. I made it maybe a mile before I realized how foolish it was. In the darkness, every shadow was a threat. I had no water, no food, no idea which way was civilization. Coyotes howled in the distance, their cries raising goosebumps on my skin. A hand fell on my shoulder. I shrieked. "Foolish," Samuel said. He'd approached so silently I hadn't heard a single footfall. "You would die before sunrise." "Maybe that's better," I said defiantly, though my voice shook. "Better than living like a savage." His face hardened at the word. Without speaking, he took my arm and led me back. I expected anger, punishment, but he simply pointed to my sleeping area and walked away. The next morning, I woke to find a pair of sturdy moccasins beside my bed, along with a deerskin skirt and a cotton blouse. My own clothes were in tatters. Pride warred with practicality, and practicality won. The clothes fit perfectly. The moccasins were more comfortable than any shoe I'd ever owned. When I emerged, Samuel nodded in approval, but said nothing. That day he began to teach me. He showed me how to bank a fire to keep coals alive, how to identify edible plants, how to read the sky for weather. His hands guided mine as I learned to grind corn, to weave baskets, to set snares. "Why didn't you teach me before?" I asked as we worked. "You were not ready to learn," he said. "Anger and pride make poor students." I wanted to argue, but he was right. My anger had blinded me. Now, as he patiently showed me each skill, I began to see the intelligence behind his primitive ways. Everything had a purpose, refined by generations of survival. One evening, I successfully started a fire on my first try. Samuel smiled, a brief, rare thing that transformed his stern features. "Good," he said simply, but the praise warmed me more than the flames. That night, a thunderstorm rolled through the valley. I huddled in the dwelling as lightning split the sky. A particularly loud clap of thunder made me cry out. Suddenly, Samuel was there, ducking into the entrance, soaked from the rain. "The storm frightens you," he observed. "Everything here frightens me," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. "Fear is wise," he said, sitting just inside the entrance. "But you must learn which fears to heed and which to release. The storm brings life. Without it, the desert dies." As the rain eased, the air smelled clean and alive. "Tell me about your mother," I said impulsively. He was quiet for a long time. "She was a medicine woman," he finally said. "Knew all the plants, all the old songs. She tried to teach me, but I was young and angry, caught between two worlds belonging to neither." "What happened to her?" His jaw tightened. "Soldiers came to move our band to the reservation. She refused to go. Said the mountains were our blood and bones. They She died fighting for this land. I was 14. I felt a stab of sympathy. And your father? Gone long before. Back to his white god. Left nothing but his name and a blue coat that my mother burned." The bitterness in his voice was profound. I understood then why he lived alone, why he was so desperate for a wife. He was an outcast, rejected by both worlds that had made him. "I'm sorry," I said softly. He looked at me sharply, searching for mockery, but found only sincerity. "The past is dead. We live now, or we don't live at all." He left then, returning to his post outside. I lay awake, thinking about the strange parallels in our lives. Both abandoned, both forced to survive. Maybe that was why he'd chosen me. My second escape attempt came 3 days later. Better planned, but just as doomed. He caught me trying to saddle a horse at dawn. He didn't touch me, just stood watching with those dark, patient eyes. "Where would you go?" he asked quietly. "Your father would sell you again. The town people would call you ruined. No decent man would have you. Where is this freedom you seek?" The words were cruel because they were true. My hands stilled on the saddle. There was no answer. I had no choices left. "I hate you," I whispered, but the words had no conviction. "No," Samuel said. "You hate the truth. That is different." He helped me unsaddle the horse. Something had shifted. My attempts at escape were over. A grim determination to master this life I couldn't leave took their place. That evening, he brought out a small leather pouch and emptied beads, silver conchos, and delicate shells onto a flat stone. "These were my mother's," he said, "for ceremony, for prayer. A wife should have beautiful things." I touched the artifacts gently, moved. "I don't know your ceremonies." "Then I will teach you," he said, "if you wish to learn." "Yes," I said, surprising myself again. "I wish to learn." That night, for the first time, he remained in the dwelling after dark. He sat across the fire from me, telling stories of the mountains, how coyotes stole fire for the people, how the stars came to be. His voice was different when he told these tales, softer, carrying the cadence of his mother's tongue. I was captivated. When he finished, the fire was low. "My mother would have liked you," Samuel said suddenly. "You have strength even when you are afraid. That is the Apache way, to grow strong from struggle." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "Strength is not in feeling," he said. "It is in surviving, in learning, in choosing to live when it is easier to die." He rose to leave. You are stronger than you know, Clara Mason. It was the first time he'd used my full name. As he left, I wrapped myself in the fur blankets. Outside, an owl called, just as in the stories. It no longer frightened me. I thought of my father's cruel words. You belong to him now. Yes, perhaps I did. But maybe, just maybe, that belonging could become a choice. For the first time since leaving Bitter Creek, I slept peacefully through the night. The desert revealed its harsh realities day by day. A sandstorm swept through, a choking wall of grit that coated everything. I huddled in the dwelling while Samuel worked to secure our supplies. When it passed, our water was contaminated, half our dried meat ruined. We go to the higher spring, he said, already planning our recovery. You come? It wasn't a question. I helped load the pack horse and followed him up a treacherous path. The trail was barely wide enough for the horses, with a sheer drop on one side that made my stomach clench. At the spring, a crystal-clear pool, he showed me how to test water for purity. As I knelt to fill the jars, I saw my reflection. I hardly recognized myself. My skin was darker, my hair in a simple braid adorned with a beaded tie he'd given me. The soft town girl was gone, replaced by someone harder, more capable. Mountain lion, Samuel said suddenly, pointing to marks in the mud. Fresh. We leave quickly. The journey back was tense. I found myself naturally falling into his watchful state, scanning the rocks and shadows. When we reached home safely, I felt a surge of accomplishment that surprised me. That evening, disaster struck. Reaching for a pot, I knocked over the basket of our remaining cornmeal. It scattered across the ground, instantly ruined. No! I cried, dropping to my knees. Weeks of food gone. I expected anger. Instead, he knelt beside me. Mistakes happen, he said calmly. We adapt. But the corn, we need it. Then we find other food. The desert provides, if you know how to ask. He helped me to my feet, his hand lingering on my elbow. Tomorrow I show you. The next day became a lesson in foraging. He led me through the valley, pointing out plants I'd walked past 100 times. Prickly pear cactus, mesquite pods, agave hearts. Your people see empty land, he explained. My people see a garden. I was genuinely interested. When I successfully identified an edible root on my own, his approving nod filled me with pride. While gathering piñon nuts, I stretched to reach a full cone and lost my balance on the rocky slope. I cried out as I fell, but strong arms caught me, pulling me against a solid chest. We stayed frozen like that. Samuel holding me, my hands gripping his shoulders. I could feel his heartbeat, rapid despite his calm exterior. Our eyes met, and something electric passed between us, an awareness that had been building for weeks. Then he set me carefully on my feet and stepped back. Be careful, he said roughly. I cannot always catch you. The air between us had changed. The following days were filled with a new tension. He began teaching me to use his bow, standing behind me to adjust my stance, his breath warm on my neck. I found myself watching him as he worked, admiring the efficient grace of his movements. One evening, as I struggled to repair a torn moccasin, he sat beside me closer than usual and took the work from my hands. Like this, he said, his fingers demonstrating the tight stitches. You do this better than many women I knew in town, I said. His mouth quirked. Apache men learn all skills. Never know when you will be alone. But you're not alone now, I said softly. He paused, looking at me with those deep brown eyes. No, he agreed, not alone. That night, he lingered in the dwelling's entrance. Are you guarding against something? I asked from my bed of furs. Always guarding, he replied. It is the way of survival. He paused. Even from me, especially from you. I didn't know how to respond. I lay quiet, acutely aware of his presence. The next test came in the form of a rattlesnake. I was gathering firewood when I heard the distinctive rattle. I froze, spotting the coiled serpent just feet away. Samuel, I called, my voice steady despite my terror. Snake! He appeared instantly. With liquid precision, he pinned the snake's head with a long stick and dispatched it with his knife. You did well, Wayne, he said, noting my control. No panic, you learn. I had a good teacher, I replied, still shaky. He skinned the snake. We eat this tonight. Waste nothing. He looked at me appraisingly. Many white women would faint at such a sight. I'm not most white women, I said with a touch of my old defiance. No, he agreed, and there was warmth in his voice. You are not. That night as we ate the snake meat, which tasted surprisingly like chicken, I felt a shift in my perspective. The fear that had dominated my first weeks was fading, replaced by respect for the land and a growing confidence. And underneath it, an attraction to the man who was my teacher, my protector, my companion. The lesson that changed everything came the next morning. Samuel announced we would hunt larger game. He gave me a knife. If something happens to me, you must know how to defend yourself, how to survive alone. The thought of him being hurt sent a spike of fear through me. Nothing will happen to you, I said firmly. He almost smiled. You sound like a wife now, not a captive. The words hung between us. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I didn't deny it. When had this place started to feel like home? We tracked a small herd of deer. When we got close, he raised his bow, then paused. You try, he whispered, handing it to me. My hands shook as I nocked the arrow. The deer was a clear shot, but my release was clumsy. The arrow flew wide and the herd bolted. I expected criticism. Instead, Samuel laughed, a rich, deep sound I'd never heard before. What's funny? I demanded, embarrassed. You, he said, still chuckling. Your face so serious, like going to war. Hunting is not anger. It is patience. As they turned to follow the deer, Samuel suddenly pushed me behind him, his body tensing. I followed his gaze. Fresh bear tracks, massive and deep. We go back, he said quietly. Now. He kept himself between me and the tracks as we retreated. His protectiveness touched something deep inside me. When we reached the valley, I impulsively caught his arm. Thank you, I said, for keeping me safe, for teaching me, for... I struggled for the words. He covered my hand with his. You are my wife. Your safety is my life now. That evening, I caught him watching me with a soft, wondering expression. What? I asked. I see you happy, he said simply. For the first time, it is good to see. I realized he was right. Despite the hardships, I had found moments of genuine happiness here. The satisfaction of mastering a new skill, the quiet companionship. I suppose I am, I admitted, or at least, not unhappy. It was enough. That night, when he rose to leave the dwelling, I spoke. Stay? He turned, his expression carefully neutral. Are you sure? My heart hammered, but I nodded. It gets cold at night, warmer with two. It was an excuse, and we both knew it. He spread his blanket on the opposite side of the fire pit, maintaining a respectful distance even as he honored my request. As I drifted off to sleep, I was acutely aware of his presence, the way the firelight played across his features, the strange comfort of knowing he was near. The desert night sang outside, but inside a different kind of music was beginning, the tentative harmony of two lonely souls finding solace in each other's company. The sun beat down as I worked at the stream, washing clothes the way Samuel had taught me, beating them against the rocks. I'd grown strong in the months since my arrival. I was so focused, I didn't hear the horses until they were nearly on me. I looked up. My blood ran cold. 3 white men sat on their mounts watching me. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to pure contempt. Well, well, the leader said, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained teeth. What have we here? Little white girl playing Indian. I stood slowly, aware of my Apache dress, my sun-darkened skin. I clutched the wet clothing to my chest like a shield. Heard tell there was a squaw man up in these mountains, another rider said, his mean eyes traveling over my body. Didn't believe it till now. Look at her, dressed up like a savage. Please, I said, hating how my voice shook. Just leave. We want no trouble. The leader spat tobacco juice near my feet. We? You mean you and your red buck? Where is he, girl? Out hunting while his white woman does the wash? Shameful, the third man added. A Christian woman, living in sin with a heathen. Your family must be rolling in their graves. They sold me, I burst out before I could stop myself, for a horse. So don't talk to me about shame. The younger man laughed, an ugly sound. Sold you? Well, that makes sense. Damaged goods. I bet we could still find a use for you once we deal with your Apache. Fear, cold and sharp, spiked through me. You leave him alone. He's done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong? The leader's voice hardened. These mountains are for white folks, girl, not for Indians who steal our women. An arrow thudded into the ground inches from his horse's hooves. The animal reared. Samuel stood on the ridge above, another arrow already knocked, his expression deadly. The woman said leave, he called down. I say it once. The men reached for their guns, but Samuel's bow was already drawn. You shoot, you die, he said simply. Maybe you kill me too. Maybe not. Want to find out? A tense standoff stretched between them. Finally, the leader spat again and turned his horse. This ain't over, he snarled. The army's gonna hear about this. An Apache threatening decent folk. They'll come for you, savage. The three men rode off, their crude laughter echoing off the canyon walls. My legs gave out, and I sank to the ground, shaking. Samuel was beside me in moments. Did they hurt you? He asked, his eyes scanning me for injury. No, I managed. But Samuel, what they said about the army? Empty threats, he said. But I saw the flicker of concern in his eyes. That evening, I couldn't eat. The encounter had shaken me. All the fears and prejudices I'd been raised with came flooding back. I caught myself looking at Samuel differently, seeing him through their eyes. Savage. Heathen. The words echoed in my mind. You are thinking their words, Samuel said quietly, reading me as he always could. I flushed with shame. I don't mean to. It's just, all my life I was taught. I know what you were taught, he interrupted, his voice bitter. Same words they used when they killed my mother. Words to make us less than human, so taking from us feels right. But you're not less than human, I protested. I struggled to find the words for what he had become to me. Teacher, protector, friend. Something more I wasn't ready to name. I am Apache, he said simply. To them, it is the same as being an animal. And you living with me. To them, you are worse. You are a traitor to your blood. The harsh truth of it sat between us. I thought of my life in town, the church socials, the narrow boundaries, all of it lost to me now. Do you regret it? I asked suddenly. Trading for me? Bringing this trouble? He looked at me for a long moment. Do you regret learning to survive? Finding strength you didn't know you had? Being free of a father who would sell you? That's not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. He stood, pacing to the dwelling entrance. Tomorrow I teach you where to hide if they come back, how to disappear in these mountains. What about you? I will do what I must to protect my wife. The word sent a shiver through me. Wife. I rarely thought of myself in those terms, but hearing it now, after facing those men's contempt, something shifted inside me. That night I lay awake long after the fire died. Through the entrance I could see Samuel keeping watch, his silhouette alert against the stars. My protector, my guardian, my husband. Moving quietly, I rose and went to him, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. He made room for me to sit beside him. Can't sleep, I said. Fear is loud, he acknowledged. We sat in silence, watching the clouds drift across the moon. Finally, I found the courage. I'm not sorry, I said quietly. Whatever those men think, whatever I've lost, I'm not sorry to be here. To be, I swallowed hard, to be yours. He turned to look at me, his dark eyes unreadable in the moonlight. Slowly he reached out and touched my face. His fingers were calloused but gentle, tracing the line of my cheek with a reverence that made my breath catch. Clara, he said, and my name on his lips was like a prayer. You honor me. The space between us vanished. I leaned into his touch. When he lowered his head, I met him halfway. The kiss was tentative at first, a question asked and answered. Then my arms went around his neck, and he pulled me closer, and the careful distance we had maintained for months dissolved like morning mist. When we finally parted, both of us breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "Are you sure?" he asked again, but this time the meaning was deeper. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm sure." He stood, drawing me up with him, and led me back into the dwelling. The bed of furs that had seemed so foreign was now home, especially with him beside me. He was gentle, patient, treating me with a tenderness that brought tears to my eyes. Later, as we lay entwined, I traced the scar on his cheek. "Will they really come? The army?" "Perhaps," he admitted, "but tonight, we are only us." I pressed closer, feeling safe despite the danger. Let them call me ruined, a traitor to my race. I had found something here worth more than their approval. Strength, partnership, and now love. "My wife," he murmured against my hair, and the words were a vow. "My husband," I replied, sealing our truth with another kiss. Outside, coyotes sang to the desert moon. The mountains stood witness to a love that bloomed in defiance of the world. In the morning, we would prepare. But for now, in his arms, I let myself believe that love was stronger than hate, that two outcasts could forge a life worth living. The words that were once my shame became my promise. Not an ending, but a beginning. The letter came with a traveling merchant named Josiah, a grizzled old man who sometimes traded with Samuel. My heart leaped with a familiar mix of hope and dread. "Got something for the lady," Josiah said, handing me a crumpled envelope. "Bad news travels on paper," Samuel said quietly after Josiah had gone. I opened it. The words hit me like physical blows. I sank onto a stone, the paper fluttering from my fingers. "My parents," I whispered. "They're dead. Cholera took them both last month." Samuel knelt beside me, not touching, but present. I felt hollow. These were the people who had sold me, yet they were still my blood. "The house is abandoned," I read numbly. "Everything sold for debts. There's nothing left." "You have a home here," Samuel reminded me gently. I laughed, a broken sound. "Do I? I'm neither white nor Apache, neither daughter nor truly wife. I'm nothing." "You are Clara," he said firmly, "a strong woman who survived, who learned, who chose love over fear. That is not nothing." I looked at him through my tears. The man who had bought me like livestock, yet treated me like a treasure. My parents had sold me to save themselves and died anyway, while I lived on in the arms of the man they despised. That night Samuel held me as I grieved, for my parents, for the life I'd never return to, for the person I'd never be again. He sang softly in Apache, the words a strange comfort. "I should feel guilty," I confessed into the darkness, "but all I feel is free. Does that make me terrible?" "It makes you honest," he replied. "Dead chains are still chains. Now you choose. Mourn what was, or build what is." The next morning brought new trouble. Samuel returned from his trap lines with a grim expression. "Riders in the lower valley. 6, maybe 7. Moving careful." "The army?" I asked, fear spiking. "No uniforms, bounty hunters. They're looking for someone." My mind raced. Those men from the stream? Or was this about Samuel's past, the soldier he'd told me he'd killed, the one who'd murdered his mother? "We need to hide," I said. "No." Samuel's voice was flat. "I do not run from my home. You will go to the cave I showed you. Take supplies for 3 days." "I'm not leaving you." "You must," he insisted, gripping my shoulders. "If they take me, you know these mountains now. You can survive. Go to Josiah. He will help you." "Safe?" I pulled away, angry. "Where is safe for me now? Back in town, where they'll call me ruined? With another man who will use me because I'm damaged goods?" "Better than dead," he said harshly. "No," I said, surprising myself with my own vehemence. "It's not. I would rather die here as your wife than live out there as their shame." Something shifted in his expression. He pulled me close, kissing me fiercely. "Stubborn woman," he murmured. Then we faced them together. We spent the day preparing. As the sun set, the riders appeared. I recognized the leader, a notorious bounty hunter named Jake Morrison. "Samuel Crow Feather," he called out. "I know you're up there. We got paper on you from the army. Says you killed a Sergeant Baker 5 years back." Worth good money, dead or alive. He grinned. Dead is easier to transport. I felt Samuel tense. Baker, the sergeant who'd led the raid on his mother's camp. The man who'd shot her as she tried to protect their sacred grounds. Baker was a murderer, I shouted before Samuel could stop me. He killed innocent women. Morrison laughed. Looks like you got yourself a regular little Apache lover there. Don't worry, sweetheart. We can find someone to take you off our hands once we're done. The crude threat snapped something in me. Before Samuel could react, I grabbed his rifle and fired. The shot took Morrison's hat clean off his head. Next one goes lower, I called, working the lever to chamber another round. My husband fought for his family. What do you fight for? Money? The hunters scrambled for cover. In the chaos, Samuel pulled me behind a rock barricade. Brave but foolish, he said, though pride flickered in his eyes. I won't let them take you, I said fiercely. The standoff stretched through the night. They tried to flank us, but Samuel's knowledge of the terrain and my unexpected skill with the rifle drove them back. As dawn approached, Morrison tried a different tactic. Girl, he called. He's a savage. You stay with him. You'll die with him. I thought of my parents dying of disease in their proper town. I thought of the narrow life I might have had. You're right, I called back, feeling Samuel stiffen beside me. He'll never fit in your civilization. Neither will I. Not anymore. But out here, we're free. We're alive. That's worth more than your blood money. Your choice, Morrison snarled. Boys, burn them out. But before they could act, new riders appeared on the ridge. It was Josiah with 3 other trappers, all armed. This here's a peaceful valley, Josiah announced. Man wants to live quiet, that's his right. You boys best move along. Morrison looked at the defenders above, at the new arrivals. The math had shifted. This ain't over, he promised, but he signaled his men to withdraw. As they disappeared, I sagged against Samuel, shaking. Will they come back? Perhaps, he said, but now they know you shoot straight. That evening, I stared into the fire. I could have gotten us killed, acting on anger. You acted on love, Samuel corrected, on justice. My mother would have liked you very much. I leaned against him. I meant what I said about choosing this, choosing you. The cost is high, he agreed. He kissed my temple. But the reward is worth any price. That night we made love with a desperate passion, knowing how close we'd come to losing everything. Afterward, I lay in his arms. I have no people now, I murmured. No family, no place in the white world. You have me, he said simply, and I have you. We make our own people, our own world. It wasn't enough to erase the fear, but it was a start. I dozed, my last thought a prayer. Let us have time. Let us have peace. Let us have each other. The pursuit came 3 days later. Morrison had regrouped. This time he brought more men. Their grim determination spoke of wounded pride. I spotted the dust cloud from the high ridge where Samuel had taken me. 12 riders, Samuel confirmed, lowering the field glasses Josiah had left us. They track well. We'd been moving since dawn, using every trick Samuel knew to throw them off, but Morrison was no amateur. The canyon, I suggested, pointing to a narrow defile ahead. Samuel nodded. Good for defense, bad for escape. We make our stand there. We pushed the horses hard, reaching the canyon as the sun peaked. It was a good position. High walls, limited approaches, a spring-fed pool. They appeared at the canyon mouth near sunset, spreading out. Crow feather, Morrison's voice echoed off the walls. Last chance. Send out the woman and surrender. Counter offer, I called back, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You leave now, and I don't put a bullet through your other ear. I punctuated the threat with a shot that sparked off the rocks inches from his head. The man dove for cover, cursing. Damn, Hellcat, one of his men shouted. Jake, she ain't The man's protest cut off in a gurgle. I watched in horror as he toppled from his horse, one of Samuel's arrows in his throat. First blood. Everything had changed. The canyon erupted in gunfire. We had good cover, but we were badly outnumbered. As darkness fell, the shooting became sporadic. My hands were steady on my rifle, but my mind raced. I had never imagined myself capable of this. Now I aimed and fired with deadly intent. "You fight like an Apache," Samuel said during a lull, approval in his voice. "I fight like a woman defending her home," I corrected, smiling grimly. The night brought new challenges. Morrison sent men to scale the canyon walls. Samuel seemed to have eyes in the darkness, picking off climbers with thrown knives and silent arrows. I covered the main approach, firing at muzzle flashes. Near dawn, exhausted and low on ammunition, we heard them organizing a final assault. I looked at Samuel. We'd fought well, but the odds were catching up. "I love you," I said simply, reaching for his hand. "And I love you," he replied, squeezing my fingers. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The attack came from 3 directions. I fired until my rifle clicked empty, then drew my pistol. Samuel's bow sang its deadly song. Men fell, but more kept coming. Just as they were about to overrun us, new gunfire erupted from the canyon rim. I looked up, figures silhouetted against the lightning sky. Apache warriors painted for battle, firing down on Morrison's exposed men. The hunters, caught in a crossfire, broke and ran. Morrison took an arrow in the shoulder, but managed to escape with his remaining men. As the dust settled, one of the Apache descended to our position. He was young, with intelligent eyes that studied me with frank curiosity. "Samuel Crow Feather," he said in accented English, "the old woman dreams of you, says you need help." Samuel spoke rapidly in Apache. More fighters appeared. "This is Robert Tall Hawks," Samuel told me. His grandmother was my mother's friend. "The white woman who shoots straight," Robert said, inclining his head to me. "The old woman dreams of you too. Says you have an Apache heart and white skin." The warriors made camp, treating us as one of their own. "Your people," I said to Samuel quietly. "I thought you had no one." "I thought so too," he admitted, "but blood calls to blood." Robert approached us. "The hunters will return. Bring the army maybe. This place is known now. Not safe." "Where can we go?" I asked. "The old woman says come to the mountains in Mexico. Apache land where white law doesn't reach. You would be welcome." I felt torn. Safety, community. But it meant running again. "We need time to think," Samuel said. Robert nodded. "We watched the trails for 3 days. Decide by then." He paused, looking directly at me. "The old woman also says the white woman carries new life, an Apache child growing in a white womb. This is powerful medicine." My hand flew to my stomach. I'd suspected for weeks, but hadn't been certain. Samuel's eyes widened, a mix of pure joy and stark fear crossing his face. "A child," he breathed. After the warriors left, we sat by the pool. "This changes everything," Samuel said. "A child needs safety, a community." "Our child," I said firmly. "Yours and mine. Neither white nor Apache, but both." "The hardest path," and he warned, "belonging nowhere." "Or belonging everywhere," I countered. "Making our own place." We spent the 3 days recovering. I practiced with the Apache women, learning new medicines specific to pregnancy. Their easy acceptance was a revelation. On the 3rd dawn, Morrison returned. This time he had blue-coated cavalry with him, at least 30 soldiers. "Federal warrant," an officer called. "Samuel Crow Feather, you are under arrest for the murder of Sergeant William Baker. Surrender peacefully." I felt Samuel tense. This was different. The army was relentless, and now with a child coming. I looked at Robert, who'd materialized beside us. "What would the old woman say?" He smiled slightly. "She says the eagle does not ask the mountain for permission to fly. Make your choice, then make it right." I looked at Samuel. We'd come too far to surrender. I placed my hand over my still flat stomach, where our child, our future grew. A life that deserved freedom. "We go with you," Samuel told Robert. "To Mexico, to your people." "Our people now," Robert corrected, glancing meaningfully at me. As we prepared to slip away through secret paths, I took one last look at the approaching soldiers. Among them, I spotted a familiar face. The young lieutenant from Bitter Creek who'd once courted me. Our eyes met. I saw the shock on his face at my transformation. Let him report back that Clara Mason was dead. That frightened girl was gone. In her place stood a wife, a warrior, a mother-to-be. A woman who had chosen love over safety, freedom over acceptance. Ready? Samuel asked, extending his hand. I took it without hesitation. Always. We melted into the landscape with the Apache, leaving the soldiers searching in the dust. Ahead lay unknown challenges, but I faced them without fear. I had been traded for a horse, yes, but in losing everything, I had found myself. I had found love. And now, with new life growing inside me, I rode toward a future written not in white law or Apache tradition, but in the fierce love of two people who had made their own world in the harsh, beautiful wilderness. Winter came to the Mexican mountains with a vengeance, blanketing the Apache camp in snow. Clara, now heavy with child, moved carefully through the pristine drifts. The camp had welcomed them with cautious warmth. The old woman, Maria Singing Crow, had dreamed of their arrival. The child you carry, Maria had told Clara, will walk in both worlds. Neither cage nor chain will hold such a spirit. Months later, Clara had found her place. Her skill with a rifle and herbs, her devotion to Samuel, had earned her respect that transcended blood. She paused, one hand on her swollen belly as the baby kicked. Samuel appeared at her side, ever watchful. You should rest, he said. Movement is good, Clara replied, echoing what the Apache women had taught her. Your child is strong, wants to meet the world. Samuel's hand joined hers on her belly, his touch reverent. Among his mother's people, he'd changed. The constant vigilance remained, but it no longer carried the edge of a man alone against the world. That evening, as snow began falling again, the first pains came. The Apache women took charge, shooing a panicked Samuel out of their shelter. Maria Singing Crow herself attended, declaring the birth too important for younger hands. The labor was long. Clara heard Samuel pacing outside, his voice raised in desperate prayer, sometimes in English, sometimes in Apache. When the baby finally came, her cry was strong and defiant, echoing off the mountains. Let the father come, Maria commanded. Samuel burst in, his composure shattered by joy and relief. A girl, Clara whispered, exhausted but triumphant. Our daughter. Samuel knelt, his scarred hands impossibly gentle as he touched the baby's head. She had his dark hair, but Clara's lighter skin, a perfect blend of both. What do we call her? Clara asked. Sarah, Samuel said without hesitation. My mother's American name, Sarah Crowfeather, for both her bloods. Maria nodded. She will need both strengths. The world changes, and she must change with it. As winter deepened, Clara settled into motherhood. Sarah was an easy baby, alert and curious, beloved by the entire camp. But even in this sanctuary, the outside world intruded. Scouts brought word of increased army patrols, of Mexican soldiers paid by Americans to hunt them. The fragile peace grew thinner. One night, Samuel sat beside her with troubled eyes. Robert says we must move again, he said quietly, deeper into the mountains, or north. He knows of a mission in California, a place where mixed families can disappear, start new. Clara looked down at their daughter. In the Apache camp, Sarah was celebrated. But beyond, the world would demand she choose a side. It would punish her for being both and neither. What do you want? Clara asked Samuel. To give her choices we never had, he replied. To read and write. To learn both ways of knowing. To walk in the white world without shame, but always know her Apache heart. Clara understood. It meant giving up the warrior's life. It meant pretending to be a proper Christian woman. But for Sarah. When? She asked simply. Spring, when the passes are clear. They spent the remaining winter preparing. The night before they left, the camp held a ceremony. Sarah was blessed by Maria, given an Apache name, Morning Star between worlds, and wrapped in a blanket woven with prayers. Clara wept at the beauty of it, at the community they were leaving. You always have a place here, Maria told them. When the world is too heavy, the mountains remember. They left at dawn, 2 weeks of hard travel, avoiding towns, becoming shadows. At night, Clara would hold Sarah and whisper stories of the grandfather who sold her mother for a horse but gave her freedom, of the grandmother who was a medicine woman, of the mountains that sheltered their love. The mission was a sprawling adobe compound. The priest, Father Miguel, asked no questions, simply offering work and shelter in exchange for labor and conversion. "Can you do this?" Clara asked Samuel as they stood before their small cottage. "Pretend to be what they want?" "I have been two things my whole life," Samuel replied. "Now I will be three: Apache, white, and whatever keeps our daughter safe." That first night, in a proper bed, Clara lay awake, listening to Sarah's breathing. She thought of all the miles traveled, all the selves shed and claimed, from terrified girl to desert survivor, from purchased bride to chosen wife, from fighter to mother. Samuel stirred beside her. "Regrets?" he asked. Clara turned to face him. The same man who had bought her for a horse, taught her to survive, loved her without condition, and given her a child who was hope itself. "Never," she said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. "At 18, I was traded for a horse, but that wasn't my ending. It was my beginning." Samuel pulled her close, careful of Sarah sleeping between them. Outside, coyotes called, a reminder of the wild they would always carry within them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, learning to be servants when they had been free, teaching Sarah to navigate a world that would question her very existence. But tonight, they were simply a family. Clara closed her eyes, one hand on her daughter, the other linked with her husband's. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. Survivors, partners, parents, free. In her sleep, Sarah made a small sound of contentment. And in that moment, Clara knew with bone-deep certainty that every hardship, every loss had been worth it for this. The quiet breathing of their daughter, the solid presence of Samuel, the future spreading before them like an unwritten page. She smiled in the darkness, whispering the words that had become not her curse, but her blessing. At 18, I was traded to a solitary Apache for a horse, and in his arms I found my life. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this story of survival and love against all odds, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next thrilling tale from the untamed heart of the West. What part of Clara and Samuel's story moved you the most? I read every comment and love hearing from you.